Great evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Bro Troy, aka Mr. YM4C, but better known as Coach TJ, and welcome to a special edition of the Bro Coach Show, where elegance meets excellence and marries conversation with good energy and good food. Welcome to Table Talks. Now, I'm the co-host, or one of the hosts, Troy Jermaine Johnson, and this is my brother and friend,
J.C. Smith.
We call him Bro Smith, right? So, anyway, I definitely don't want to get too far into the conversation without us giving a moment of prayer. So, if you don't mind, we'll all minds clear, heads bowed. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you, Lord, for just being who you are all by yourself with your awesome self, God. We ask that you be in the midst of the conversation and mind the hearts of the people, God. Whatever is supposed to be said with your love, with your heart, your understanding, God. I ask that we don't leave the same way as we came, and whatever it is that's meant to be encouraged in us, that it be fulfilled. Allow us to walk in victory as we be so ever careful to give you all of the glory. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Awesome. So flow of conversation. So really quickly, I want to just go around the room. You know, Leo kind of beat me too. He was ready too. Well, he was like, I'm going to give you my story. And I appreciate that. But we definitely want to take the opportunity to learn a little bit more about who's in the room. Like having these conversations is one thing. No, it's cool, man. Like, having these conversations is one thing, man, but really understanding, like, who's in the room. Like, you never really know. I mean, you really never know. And it was mimicked earlier prior to us starting this conversation, but, it's great to know a lot. Knowledge is needed, right? It's powerful. It's a tool. But who you know has just as much leverage, sometimes even more. Depending on the situation. So that's what this night is about. Are we going to have an awesome meal? You better believe it, Slade. You are in the right place to have a wonderful meal tonight. So let's enjoy the robust meal. Let's enjoy the robust conversation. So I want to go around the room really quickly. Ladies are always first, so I'll start to my left. Let me get your name, your current role, and one word to describe yourself.
So good evening. My name is Vega Swepson. My role, I'm a resource specialist, HRD instructor, working smart master trainer at Durham Tech Community College. One word to describe myself, vivacious.
Vivacious, I love it. I love that one. He was waiting on it too. He was like, I got my word. Yes, indeed. I love it. Queen?
Okay. My name is Tia Brown, and I'm a junior at Southeast Raleigh High School. And I work with Southeast Raleigh Commerce. And one word to describe me right now would be content.
Content. We'll learn a little bit more about that one a little bit later on. Dr. Hyman.
Hello, and again, thank you for having me here at this table. My name is Dr. Monique Hyman. I am an assistant professor at North Carolina Central University. 25 years of social work practice, clinical practice, and 15 years of higher ed. Servant leader on many boards in Durham. Shout out the vice president of DSS board. And one thing that really, passionate. I'm very passionate.
I love it. Okay, sir.
Yeah. Dexter Hebert. I'm the executive director at the Southeast Raleigh YMCA. I've been with the Y for about 20 years. One word to describe me, I was getting ready to say passionate because I am, but I'm a disruptor as well.
Yeah. I love it. Well, there's a lot of passion in this room. Right? Remember, this was hand selected now. I went through the Rolodex on this one. I said, where do we go next? Young King.
My name is Matthew Slade. I am at Knightdale High School, a senior, and I play football and basketball. I'm a student athlete. And one word that would describe me is outgoing.
Say it one more time.
Outgoing.
Good stuff. I love it.
Dr. Frank Fields. I'm actually a candidate right now for Raleigh District C City Council, but more importantly, I'm a new father, had a baby. So that's the term I'm gonna use. I'm gonna use father. I just had a baby. She only 10 weeks old. Yeah. We love it. So that's my term. I'm a father. I've been I work with Wake Tech for the last 10 years. I'm a small business owner here in Raleigh, North Carolina. But the word I'm going to take is father.
Father, I love it, man. I love it. How about yourself, sir?
Good evening. My name is Jason Armstrong. I'm the police chief for the town of Apex. Graduate of North Carolina Central University. And my one word I would say is intentional.
I love that one. That's one of the ones me and the fellas use all the time, right? Even the first part of it, just the intent part, right? What's the intent, right? I love it. Young King.
My name is Tyson Bizzell. I'm in 10th grade at Southeast Raleigh High School, and I'm in the band, and I work at Southeast Raleigh Promise, and one word to describe me is kind-hearted.
Kind-hearted, indeed.
Tell
Those
them
that
how
don't.
good you can catch. Tell them how good you can catch, because you worked at a football camp that we had, didn't you?
Yeah.
You can catch, you're a football player too.
And for
Don't be
those,
ashamed of that, you can play.
for those that don't know, that's also my son.
But most importantly, you're in the band.
Yeah. Tell him what trumpet, well, excuse me, tell him what instrument you play.
Baritone,
I played baritone growing up.
Where'd you start with? Did you start with baritone?
trumpet.
Trombone.
Yep.
Cool. I'm Leonardo Williams, and I'm a small business owner in Durham, North Carolina, also a candidate for City Council, Durham City Council. I am a former band director for Southern Durham Hillside High Schools, and I am a classical tubist and euphonium baritone player as well. And I would say one word to describe me is juggernaut.
I like that. I like Marvel too. That was a dope character. Yeah. It's all right, man. He ran through all kind of brick walls. Yeah, literally, right? I could dig that. Well, first and foremost, thank you for that. There's cards in front of you guys. There's also a very unique, stylish pen too, man. I like that pen. More than welcome to keep it. But I want to take the next 5 to 7 minutes to get to know, for you guys to get to know who you're sitting next to. So you've got a pen, you've got an index card, and I want you to take 5 to 7 minutes. And after these 5 to 7 minutes, I need each of you to know 2 facts about the person sitting next to you. Things that could be current. Now, let's just make them very, very bland. It doesn't have to be too out the box, but get to know each other. And what we'll do after the 5 minutes, we'll introduce ourselves. The young people will introduce the people that are sitting next to you and tell a little bit more about who you are. So feel free to conversate. Feel free to ask questions.
On the card, there's 2 facts.
Well, I hope everyone is enjoying the conversation. We've just gotten through course 2. We're getting ready to have dessert. We've laughed, we've joked, but I really want to get into the thick of it. You know, we've got some knowledge in the room, and I want young people to walk away with some meat on the bone. So this one is for all of the adults in the room. We'll start on my left with Ms. Vega, but talk to me. What life experiences have led you to your current role, and what about that role brings you joy?
Life experiences. I think just really growing up in my community, in my neighborhood, there were lots of seniors. I think my brother and I were the only 2 children on our block. So there were a lot of elderly folks and just helping other people. You know, growing up, you're going to go and rake somebody else's yard, you're going to braid somebody's hair down the street. And so being in human services, I think that's what led me to human services, just working and helping other people. And so that I can make the record, put it on record that me living with those 6 men, they had mental health disabilities. And so that's my first career, mental health, mental illness, learning disabilities. And so that's how I ended up living with those gentlemen. And so I think that's how it happened, just growing up, helping and doing for other people. And so now in academia, I'm still helping my students, not only with their academics, but in terms of their housing. I have students who are homeless, who are hungry, who need child care, their car fixed, and so I'm still in that helping. And then I do some reentry work. I volunteer with an agency here, Community Success Initiative. So yeah, just from growing up, just helping other folks.
Yeah, part of the service. How about yourself, Dr.
Well, about last week, I had to go back to New York. My mom and my dad are 85, and so my dad had a heart attack. And so I drove myself, and because nobody could go because everybody couldn't get off. But all that to say, it just really brought back that I'm from very humble beginnings. That literally when I walked into where I lived, I just started crying. because my mother always said that she didn't want all of us, and it was 4 of us, there's only 2 of us left, but all of us, all 4 young ladies, women, had upper level degrees, and we're from the South Bronx. Soundview, the South Bronx. And so my mother always said she didn't want us to be a victim of the environment. And so sometimes I say I'm not where I want to be. But I started saying when I came home that I have to be I have to think about the blessings that I do have, because when I went back, very humble beginnings. So one of the things she also was very instrumental in is education. And when I did the other podcast about mentoring, I said all about my mom and her being one of my mentors. But education was very important, and I also shared that I left the South Bronx and went to Binghamton University, an all-Jewish university at the age of 16. So I worked really hard to get good grades so that I could get an upper-level degree, and then being able to work in social work and then go back and get my master's at Columbia, which, again, a little girl from the South Bronx going Ivy League and now having a doctorate. So I started in social work, had a private practice in New York, worked for the city for many years, and then fell into higher ed 15 years ago. And so I love mentoring students, I love educating students, and I love being able to help them get to the next level. Because in my life, I've had good mentors, but a lot of times those mentors have not been people of color. And they look like other people. And so for me, I want to be a diverse mentor. I want to be a mentor for all people. And so I just love what I do. I love working with the students and just really being able to see them like I have the blessing of pouring into the next generation. And I don't take that lightly at all. And so I think people see that. I won the 2021 Excellence in Teaching for North Carolina Central, and I've only been there 3 years, and then I won an award at Shaw. I was there for 14 years in Upper University. So I really love mentoring, and mentoring, passion about just helping students from a holistic point, not just in the education, but I don't just teach, I mentor, and I talk to them about what's going on outside of the classroom, because sometimes they're going through a lot of other things. I've had students take their whole financial check to get their parents out of jail. I mean, this is reality, right? And then they think, can they do it? And I'm like, yeah, you can do it. I'm a little girl from the project, South Bronx, and now I have a doctorate. So, and I don't take that lightly. So I love giving back, and I just love being a mentor. That's why I'm a servant leader. I'm on the DSS board, and I'm the vice president. And again, at one point, my mom had to go to public assistance, and she remembered the person who gave her first check. And look at the full circle. Now I'm still on the board as a vice president, making decisions for maybe other little Moniques out there, right, to get to the next level. So, very important passion for me.
About yourself, man.
So what led me?
Yeah, so what life experience has led to your current role, and what about your current role brings you joy?
Yeah. So for me, my my mom and dad, I spent a lot of time with my dad, and I didn't choose this career. It chose me. Football was my ticket. Everybody always, growing up in my community, that's the thing, man. A sport, especially football, growing up in Texas, that's going to be my ticket, right? To take care of my parents, to do what I got to do. And I put so much work in that. At the same time, I watched, I talk about the station wagon a lot. And I watched my dad be that man in the community that spent a lot of time with all boys, right? So that station wagon every season, basketball, football, baseball, track, that station wagon went around the neighborhood picking up all the young men in our community. And so watching my dad do that and watching him have to take a disability retirement when I was 8 years old, right? And, that was tough, right? For us. And so growing up in my community, it was only a couple of us that had our dads in our home, right? And so that was big for me. And my dad would go around, get people to sponsor the teams. Man, he was gifted at it, right? And I watched him do that. But I also watched him struggle, right, with not being able to work. I watched him struggle, and he went through depression, right? And so as I think about my journey going to the University of Arkansas, playing football, and just getting injured, right? injuries, you know, that phrase, injury prone, right? And it was just, I had a lot of losses, right? Lost my dad, I was 17, he died in my arms. And it was just a lot of losses. Lost my brother, he was 32 when he passed, right? I had to make the decision to take him off life support. I was 21 years old, right? So as I think about all of these things that were just building me up, I was also in the process of a depression, and I was like, God, why? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, you put your value in something that doesn't value you back, right? But it also did for me is give me a lot of life lessons, and so end up starting my career with the Y 20 years ago. And again, like I said, this profession chose me, and you know, just my journey in life has led me to pour into young people, and you know, not tell them what they need to do, right? But educate them on the process, right? Because it's a process. A lot of times we look forward to the outcome, and we don't enjoy the process. And I look back on it, and I wouldn't change anything about what I went through, because that's what made me who I am, right? And so enjoying the process to get to the outcome, for me, is I enjoyed the process so much when I look back on it, and I continue to do that. And so, and what brings me joy is just that. The same thing that brings me joy also drains me too, and that's pouring into people, right? And that can drain you as well. And so, but it brings me joy. I think it brings me more joy than it does drain me. So.
Yeah, good stuff. And for our young people that are listening, I really encourage you now. This is a great opportunity to write down thoughts, comments, you know, as the adults in the room share their story. It may be something that hits home for you, that resonates with you. So just be mindful of that. That's why we're here. Right? What you got, Frank?
Well, first of all, let me lead this with everything Dexter's saying is absolutely true. Not that we think it's not true, but it is true. First job I ever got out of college was at the YMCA. Dexter was who hired me. He didn't know me. He never knew me. He didn't get a recommendation because I played football. Anything, he hired me because he hired me. And I grew up for these last, so I'm 34 now. Dexter, how much older than me?
13 years.
13 years. Me and Dexter have spent a lot of time together, in the office and out of the office, right? And he's spit a lot of knowledge to me that made me who, quote unquote, who I am today. When I met Dex, I hadn't even, matter of fact, when I first started working at YMCA, I hadn't even graduated undergrad yet. I was still doing the whole pro stuff, going to all these tryouts and all that kind of stuff, you know what I mean? But under Dex's tutelage, I was able to, I went back to state, got my undergrad degree, I went and got my master's, and I got my PhD at NC State. And all this stuff I did under Dex's tutelage. So everything he's saying is 100% true. Dex didn't know me from a can of paint. He didn't, you know what I mean? So I want to start with that and give him his roses while you're here, because Dex raised me. And the man the man you see here today, Dr. Fields, you know, I own companies. I'm a political candidate and all that stuff. I wouldn't be none of that if it weren't for Dex and the YMCA. So I want to make that be clear. When we go back to what we're talking about, though, I was telling the chief, my dad, I was blessed. The biggest blessing in the African American household is to have both parents, in my opinion, right? I was blessed enough to have a father growing up. And we come from a 6-parent household, a 6-kid household, and we had our parents, same mom, same dad, 6 kids, 5 boys, 1 girl. Crazy household. And I remember, I was telling Chief, I remember at nights, it'd be February, March, cold as heck outside. My dad's warming his car up outside to go to work at 4 o'clock in the morning so he can feed these babies, so he can feed these 5 boys and 1 girl, so he can feed not only us, but he fed the community, like Dex said, right? I mean, he fed. We had an aunt who had Alzheimer's who lived there. We had an uncle who was a victim of substance abuse who lived there. So to watch my dad do all that stuff, you know, he never got no credit for it. I went to school with Jordans on, and Nike jersey and Michael Jordan jerseys and all that. My dad wore bull crap when he went out. You understand? And so to watch that, so I do what I can do, because the number one thing my dad always taught us is leave stuff better than you found it. Right? Leave it better. It don't matter what it is. If it's a shopping cart in the parking lot, push it in the shopping cart cargo. Right? My dad taught us that stuff. Leave stuff better than you found it, and he left us better than he found us. Right? Because my dad would have bailed on 6 kids, who ain't no telling what my siblings and I would be. Right? And I think Dex can attest to that, because he know my family, right? Yeah. So what I lean on is responsibility. I have done some great things in my life that's gonna make me take care of my family financially, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But that don't mean I just say, well, shoot, my family's straight, we good. Yeah. No, you gotta leave stuff better than you find it. You gotta be responsible, right? That's why I'm out at the football camps, sweating my. Yeah. Sweating. You know what I mean? Right. Yeah, you know what I mean? All that. You know what I'm saying? All that for free for them babies. You know what I'm saying? So one thing I learned from my father and my mother, no taking credit for my mom, you know what I mean, is to leave stuff better than you find it, and you're responsible now. If you're a black man who has the blessings that we have from God, whether it's education, whether it's finances, whether it's whatever, you can't just say, well, I'm straight and move on. I can't do that. And my daddy didn't raise me to be that way. My granddaddy didn't raise him to be that way. Dexter didn't raise me to be that way. Word up. So that's what I'm at with it. Word up.
Appreciate it. How about you, give me the question again?
So what life experiences have led you to your current role, and what about that role brings you joy?
So for me, I would go back to August 9th, 2014. And that was the day that Mike Brown was shot and killed in Ferguson. And so at the time, I was a captain in Georgia, Forest Park, Georgia. So I'd never heard of the city of Ferguson before, in my life. And at that time, I had been in the profession for 13 years. And, what we all saw play out, man, on TV after that event, like, we hadn't seen anything like that. The Rodney King verdict and those riots were similar, but this had a totally different feel to what we saw pouring out in the streets. And man, I was too young to understand, the Rodney King stuff and everything that went into it. Yeah. But now, I'm in the profession when Mike Brown incident happens. And so, not only did I watch it on the TV and everything that happened, but I followed it. And, several months later, a report comes out about the police department and everything that had been going up there. And so, man, I get this report, man, and I read through the report. And as I'm reading through the report and the things that, that it's talking about, man, I see a whole lot of similarities in Ferguson, Missouri that I was living, with in Forest Park, Georgia, where I was a police officer. And so my takeaway is man, if that shooting would have happened here, man, our buildings would have been burning down and all that stuff, because, what people are saying about the police department up there is the same thing that people are saying about my police department down here. And so, man, that lit a fire in me that, man, I got to get going. I got to start doing more stuff. And when I looked around, I was the only minority on our command staff in the police department. I was the first black lieutenant, first black captain, all of that my police department ever had. And so, man, that motivated, that got me going, and I started doing a lot more outreach, and a lot of things that you all know me from today was birthed out of that event, something that, happened, far, far away. And then you fast forward 6 years from that, and I'm appointed as the police chief in Ferguson, Missouri. Never, wildest dreams, couldn't imagine that, that was the incident that, really, got the fuel burning in me, and, for it to lead me there, and what I was able to take and what I was able to experience there. And so just, the payoff that has today is, for one, I'm in a position that a lot of us don't get to be in, especially in my profession, especially as young as I am, and holding the positions, that I've held. And so, when we talk about the change, in this country and this profession and what that change looks like, I get to be at the forefront of that, and that's what brings me joy. Is because I can have conversations that hadn't been had before, and I can bring a perspective, that a lot of places haven't heard, and at times they didn't care to hear that perspective, but now man, that's something that people are really gravitating to, and so that's what brings me joy is knowing that I have a platform to make a difference and bring about some change.
Yeah, good stuff. Sure. Appreciate that. Leo, what about yourself? Oh, go ahead.
Before you get to Leo, I do have a quick little follow-up. So how do you remain hopeful? It's the fuel that sparked your fire, so to speak. Obviously, we still see instances from time to time. How do you remain hopeful and kind of preach that same sort of hope throughout either your force and or just chiefs and surrounding areas in general?
So I would say, what gives me hope about it is because being on the inside, like I've seen where we've come. Now, the rest of the world, I know it doesn't feel like that a lot of the times, but that's why I get the phone calls. That's why I come to say it, because I can speak to it, because man, I've seen how far we've come. Now, I'll be the first person to admit that we still have a long way to go, but I was talking to somebody, yesterday, and we were talking about just how things unfold, and this person said that what they were hoping to see, they didn't know if they would see in their lifetime, but they know that what they're doing and the work that they're putting in today is getting us closer to that, and so that's what brings me the hope of that I know it can be done. I don't know if I'll see it in my lifetime. I don't know if I'll see it, in the rest of the career that I have left, or the rest of what I'm going to pour into it. But I think we're making progress in a system that
One built for us.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the system. Was flawed from the very beginning, and we all, most of us, recognize that, and we know and we understand that, and so. But I also, you won't hear me complain a lot about that, because that's the only system that we have, and so I can't just be dismissive of it, because we have to learn how to work within that system and to pull as much out of it as we can pull out of it, to make it as equal as we can make it for everyone.
So, Chief, I got a question for you, and this is not, I ain't calling you out. I'm on your side. What do you see if somebody told you, besides resources, funds, and all that stuff, the biggest problem you see in just say your staff or your police department, what would it be? And don't say we overwork, lack of money, all that stuff. Like, what's what you see? That's hard for me to answer, because I just got here, and so I'm still doing an assessment of my police department here. So I haven't even been here 2 months. That's a curiosity question. I ain't trying to. No. I got you. So, but here's, man, when I speak about police departments and the problem with police departments, man, it's a simple answer. All you got to do is look at the problems of our society as a whole, okay? Because the police department is nothing more than a microcosm of what the United States are. And so all the same challenges and issues that we have in this country, man, we have those issues and problems inside of the police department. And for me, what it all boils down to is people and how we connect to people. Whenever there's a problem with the police, and the first thing we start talking about, or the media starts talking about, is training. That's everybody's answer to everything, is training. Where I push against that narrative, because that is not the answer to things. And the example I give is you can send me to a class about the KKK, and I promise you I will get a 100 and an A in that class. That's not going to make me a member of the KKK. And so just because I send somebody to a class and they learn something, they can regurgitate it on the test, doesn't mean that I've changed them at all. Doesn't mean that I've opened up their mind and their thoughts to anything. That happens on the inside of your police department, and when you start working on the culture of the organization and what the leadership of the organization is willing to hold people accountable to, for us to talk about these things. And when you're working on the culture of the police department, it's something, it's a lot of work and it takes a lot of time, and what you have to do. And what I speak to is, the people that don't belong in that organization, you have to make it very clear to them that they don't belong in the organization, okay? And so, that's the first part, and they will understand that.
But the second part is you have to make it impossible for them to hide inside your organization. And how you do that is, man, you have to marry people to one another, okay? And so it's easy for me to say, all right, if you see somebody do something, man, I expect you to say something about it, or I expect you to bring it forward. But it has a totally different vibe if you put a policy in place and you actually follow through with it, where, all right, if he sees,
you get in
Dr.
trouble for
Hyman
seeing
do
that and not
something
saying
and
nothing.
you don't say anything about it, man, everybody knows, man, the penalty that you're gonna face is just as severe as the penalty of the person who did it. And that's how you start, generating that, and you start breaking it down where, man, I don't want to say anything about this. I don't want to, you don't have a choice.
Yeah.
You don't have a choice. And so when you start marrying people to other people's actions, and you start holding everybody accountable for it, man, that's how you start seeing, the change in things. And so, so that's a big part of what we have to do and what we're working on. And so some of the things that you see coming from, these legislatures and things like that. In North Carolina, even though I just got here, I know they just passed a reform bill to add some measures in place and try to add more accountability into things. Like that's how we do it. But just having people just mad at the police, because something happened or something happened elsewhere, and they just want to throw the police away, and they don't want to be involved or have any interaction, like that absolutely is not the answer. And especially for young people, and that's always my message to young people, is if you see something, if you have a problem, if you're worried and concerned about a police department, get with an adult that you trust and walk through the front door of a police department and tell them, what your concerns and what your thoughts are, what you're fearful of. In most police departments, you will find somebody in there that will take the time to sit down and talk with you. Definitely, if you come to my police department, man, I'll make the time. And that's, that's what we got to get to. And we got to get more people in these seats that have that heart and that have that outlook on things, and not just, all right, we just got to justify everything that happens, in the profession.
I love it. I totally agree, Chief, that it's a heart issue. It's a core issue.
Absolutely.
Hate is taught. It's a learned behavior. So, nonetheless, I want to hear, before we move forward, Leo, how about yourself? What life experiences have led you to your current role? And what about that role brings you joy?
Absolutely. The first thing I want to do is I want to challenge everyone to address the word community as an action word. When you get in your car or you're going somewhere with your parents, you most of the time you're not driving. You ask, where are we going? And if you're driving somewhere you've never been before, then you put the address in your GPS and you rely on that comfort. But if you have to go somewhere that you've never been and you don't know how to get there, you're literally putting a blindfold on in a dark room, and you're just going with no direction, just hope. And I think that what we've talked about this evening is the perfect transition to what I was going to actually talk about, and I think it also serves as a prerequisite, but mentorship and public safety. I challenge my community in Durham to look at the word community as an action word, because we all know what we want to live. We all know we want to live in a great community with access to nice stores, and it's safe, and it has parks and, just things to do, So we can all envision that utopia. Now we can all get on the same path to making that utopia a reality. And that is why I challenge us all to do that. And I live in Durham. My businesses are in Durham. I taught in Durham. I love Durham. I'm investing in Durham. When an entire community was displaced, my restaurant fed 50,000 meals. When the pandemic came, we fed 35,000 meals to the homeless and elderly. I raised $3 million for small businesses to keep us from losing our companies. But yet, when you think of Durham, it's almost impossible to think of Durham without thinking of the violence that's happening. And I'm on a mission to change that. Recently, I'll give you all a lived experience. My lived experience is all the things I actually just talked about. And I'm just going to talk about what inspires me to keep going every day. I realize when I turn on the news, and Chief, you're right, we, in Durham, which is self-proclaimed the most progressive town in the South, well, it's to be argued the meaning of progressive anymore. We have all the academic ideas in the book, and we always go to defunding the police, and we go to or reforming or training, but yet have we talked about the character? And I believe that we are all just victims of a bureaucratic process. And so what I recently did was I called on, because I turn on the news and see young black males as perpetrators and killing other young black males, I realized that as a black male professional in my city, I needed to do something about that. So on Friday, I held a massive press conference, and I had about 70 to 80 black males and men standing behind me. And it was a clarion call for black men across the entire city to step up and step in. I created this collective with a few brothers called 1KBM, 1,000 Black Men. And we don't need another mentoring group or mentoring organization. We have enough. We have a lot. But what we do need is we need to actually have some intentionality behind that mentorship. We need to have some tenacity with that mentoring effort or those mentoring efforts. So now, after calling on 1,000 black men to identify 2 to 3 young men of color in your neighborhood, spend at least an hour with them weekly, spend time with their family, get to know them, build that intimate trust system with them again. Now we're getting on the road to tangible actions of what community can look like. If we can't wait on an institution or a government to take care of our own, nor do we need permission to save our own. So my lived experiences have motivated me and encouraged me to do something. So now we're doing a feasibility study. We're looking at how many mentoring groups we have in the city. But one thing I do know, we have too many churches to deal with poverty. We have too many churches to deal with hunger. And I'm calling that out. And we have too many black men to turn on the news every day and see the average age of a perpetrator in Durham is between the ages of 15 and 17 years old. And the fact of the matter is, it costs $30,000 a year to incarcerate someone in this state, whereas it costs less than $2,000 a year to go to Durham Tech and get a trade certificate that is turning 6 figures. So, what I'm proud about is the fact that we're now doing something. Because in 2 weeks, I'll be meeting with every black male educator, every black male administrator in our school system. In 4 weeks, I'll be meeting with the director of public health and asking him to consider or at least advise us on the steps that we need to take to identify poverty and crime as a public health crisis. We're meeting with small business owners to look at how do we be committed to opening our doors and welcoming young brothers who may have a record, looking past that record and looking more at their potential. And the fact that we have over $102,000 already committed to this $1 million goal, and the press conference was on Friday, that brings me joy, because we're now filling a void. Death and crime does not wait on process, red tape, and bureaucracy, and neither should we.
Let me ask you a follow-up, actually, to both of you, because I know you're both running for city council in respective cities. And excuse my ignorance, but from that level, when you achieve that pinnacle, what can you affect? Like, what's one of the two things that you
This is what I was about to say. Now, and everything Leo said, he's absolutely right. I'm with him all the way. But I think what happens is we keep trying to find, we as black people, we're black people. We try to find we do the church thing, right? We do this, we do stuff like this, and we help these young brothers, young babies. I like to call them babies, you know what I'm saying? And that's great, and I love it, and we should never stop it. There has to come to a point where we realize the real systemic problem. There's systemic racism in America, but there's also systemic problems with us as black people, right? We are killing each other, right? We are, right?
white people don't have to go find 3 white boys in the neighborhood and talk to them and make sure you talk to them and make sure they be okay, right? What's going, and this is a round table, so I don't have the answer to this question. I'm saying, why do we have to find, what's going on in our community, in our neighborhood, that we got to find 3 black boys to talk to? Because if you don't talk to them, they're gonna end up in prison or something. Why is our neighborhoods even like that? Why is our culture even like that? Right? Why, if you step on somebody's shoe in the club, you get killed? Right? Why? Right? That's what's happening. And I've been there. You know what I'm saying? So I think we need to look at, I think what the problem is, I can't even say the problem, but one of the issues is we do all these small micro things. This, which y'all doing is great. What I do with the camp, whatever, is great. But we gonna have to figure out a way that we can, on a macro level, figure out why are we doing this, right? We got Italian Americans who don't kill each other at the rate we kill each other. We got European Americans who don't kill each other at the rate we kill each other. We got Native Americans who don't kill each other at the rate that we kill each other. Why is this? Why? And I think we need to figure out that too. Right, we got to keep doing everything we doing. I'm right there with Leo. We got to do all this stuff, but there's something. None of that's gonna matter, right? It's like Jerry Jones being the owner for the Cowboys. You can get a new quarterback, you can get a new receiver, you can get all that, but if the ownership is effed up, right, then it's gonna always be bad. So I think I want to start focusing on how can we intentionally do something that makes us not even have to, we got to do. Why we got to find 2 kids and talk to them and all that stuff? I agree with it. We should do it. But why is that? Why are we the only ones that got to do that? Native Americans don't do that. European Americans don't do that. Italian Americans don't do that. Right? We have to go get our black boys off the street and say, hey, don't kill him. What's going on? And that's what I want to focus a little bit on in my campaign and all that, more than the transactional. So you got transformational stuff, which is I want to focus on, and then you got transactional stuff. You got to do both, right? But I want to focus a little bit more on transformational stuff for me.
I think that's a great question too. Before we move forward, for the last 20 to 30 minutes, young people, you have heard adults that have nothing but your best interest at heart share theirs. Right. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Out of the conversation that you've heard so far, is there any questions? Now, again, this is a pause for the cause. This is a room check. I want to make sure if there's any thoughts that you have, if there's any concerns or questions that you have, this is your time. This is your opportunity to engage. I don't want to put you on the spot now. If you want me to move forward, I will now. But I want to give you the opportunity to share your thoughts. Is there any questions that you may have had? Now that you know a little bit more about the people that's in the room, you know a little bit more about them personally, you know a little bit more about them in their career, their passions. I got a mic on, I'm good. Yeah, but yeah. You got anything to you? How about yourself, Slade?
Slade got something for me.
No, not yet.
Taking it all in.
You taking it all in? Okay. How about yourself, young King Tyson? Any questions, concerns, thoughts, comments? No. All right, so now we're gonna make you talk. Since you didn't want to volunteer, you're gonna be volunteered.
Thank you for tuning in to part 1 of this Table Talk series here at Second Empire Restaurant and Tavern. Tune in next Sunday, November the 14th at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for part 2 of this conversation here on the Bro Code Table Talk series, where elegance meets excellence.